Aye.
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 In closed session, the doors are closed. And with that, I'd like to turn the discussion over Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712. I move that the Fairfax County Wetlands Board members certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters will all be fully exempt from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in closed session. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Now raise your hand, Ariel.
I thought I was just observing tonight, Catherine.
I don't think so. I think you remember. We need you to say yes.
Okay, I'm just trying, I didn't realize I was actually voting tonight, Catherine, and I emailed and she said I wasn't voting.
Yeah, just so you understand, we wouldn't have had you in the session if we didn't think you were a member.
Gotcha, okay.
I'm sorry, this world is pretty confusing. Thank you.
Well, no, I knew I was a member. I just thought there was a provision for me not to vote until I fully came up to speed on all of the rules and everything.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And Mark Eversole joins.
Yes. All righty.
Mark, I apologize for making you wait so long.
That's okay. Glad to be here.
Yes, we'll open the doors. Does anyone need a break? And then we're gonna push on.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda was to discuss the subcommittee draft documents.
Oh, here, and you have to open it all the way.
Just push it gently all the way open and it'll click. Push it hard,
There you go.
firmly, but gently. So Catherine, I guess what I'd like to do here is just discuss quickly the comments.
Yes.
If you can pull those up.
Yep.
So for everybody's just a little reminder here where Catherine does that. We have 2 draft documents, policy documents out there for public comment. We've notified a whole range of people. We have really only 3 people who gave us formal written comments. I have summarized those in the document we're about to see. And the purpose of going through this with you all is after we've reviewed these, I'm going to ask for a motion for the board to approve me and Kim to go back, make revisions to these documents and issue them as final. And they will post it as our rules to be used by the county henceforth. And there are a couple of very important things in these to realize. We have incorporated the list of virtually everything that BMRC recommends, but we have left staff to make a decision about whether or not an applicant actually has to provide each of those. So they get this list, there's this big long list, but when somebody comes to us, we will make a decision about how much we need.
So
The other, I'm sorry.
staff being county staff or staff meaning wetlands boards, county staff.
Now, typically Catherine will work with advise and consent, so it's not done in a vacuum. Usually we have 2 people visit sites where there are permits were applied, so there's at least 2 people who are really informed about what's there. So it's not entirely by staff, board members do participate. But it's important to know that that guideline includes everything in the VMRC requirements. But it does not say if you need to actually do all of it or not. The other point that is, I think, very important here is the guidelines now state that you, unless you get a waiver, you must have your application prepared by a certified professional of the state, professional engineer, a surveyor, or a landscape architect is generally what that is. That language came from the Virginia beach guidelines. So it's not new, but going forward, I hope we will never have a situation like this again, because the applicant in such a complex situation will have to most probably attend a PE to be able to do a change like this.
So I forget off the top of my head, the portion of the document that holds that stipulation about the PE, is that for bulkheads? Is that for every application? I can't,
Good call.
I thought it was something.
okay.
No,
It was not?
no.
Okay. I know it's
It
something that's
states, it quite simply states that a certified professional is required. However, you may apply for a waiver. So the assumption is it's required. Now, I think our intent here is if it's a minor maintenance item, we're not going to ask for a PE stamp. But I wanted to lift the language straight from Virginia Beach. So it's already been tested, it's been in place, it's in use, it hasn't been challenged. That
Katie would be making the decision about the waiver.
usually with advice and consent of the people who visit the
Got it.
site with them. And, you know, if Catherine is really concerned about it, she can call a board meeting and ask us. We also have Mark Everson. Mark? You there, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Worked with Mark quite a bit. He is not going to tell us that we require a PE or not. It's not his job. But he can certainly inform us about whether something is pretty dang complex and would be difficult for a homeowner to prepare an appropriate application. Is that fair, Mark? Did I speak for you too much?
No, that's fair. I think Katie and I can, and we can bring VIMs in if we need to, but I think we can make the first call on that. You know, we may need to involve you, but I think we can take the first pass at it.
And I'm discussing this because it's really the only major change from the last time you reviewed all of it. But anybody have any comment on this? Are we okay with that?
Just a comment maybe, like, are you comfortable with the level of risk then that the county staff will assume in making that determination? So like if they say, oh, no P was required for it, then we get another similar complex situation, they'll say, well.
So Mark has left us, but it's really hard to pursue the case.
I've had some conversations with the Land Development Services Department, which does permitting for essentially everything else, building permits for everything, and they do not require their permitters or their plan reviewers, even for complex geotech studies, to have PEs. Obviously, they have senior PEs on staff that lead those groups, that advise their staff, that are those technical resources. But it is not required. At least that's my initial feedback, because I've been looking into how I'm going to implement this at the county. So I've been having some of those initial conversations. And once I figure that out, if you all have questions about how I'm going to review a geotech study that might be needed, I can brief you all on that once I figure all those details out.
Yeah, not down to the level of county expertise, just
Yeah.
I'm placing more risk on the county for saying, well, we're gonna make that call whether you need this or not for this site, right?
I think actually the risk is on the PE. The licensed professional puts something in, it fails, or it doesn't actually follow the regulation. That's why they're licensed. Right, Kim?
Katie, I can put you in touch with the Virginia Beach staff too, if you'd like to talk with them about how they handle the waiver issue.
Sometimes would you not do, say that you're not certifying design? Whatever, I mean, yeah,
I'm sorry, there's additional language.
yes, there's a bunch of language.
That additional language states that at the completion of the project, that design professional will be required to certify that it's complete in accordance with the application. Which is frankly really trying to take burden off of staff. Because the enforcement of these permits is a significant amount of work. And if we can get a design professional, any one of those design professionals, to put their state license on the line, I think we're much more likely to do well. Did have a case like this about 10 years ago or so. That there was an applicant that prepared an application that included a PE stamp. And it was a really good job. Came forward, one of my first board meetings, I thought we were going to immediately vote for it, no problem. Came to the meeting, the hearing, and they said they wanted to present the plan, put the plan up on the board. Went through and said, well, we're going to do this, but we're not going to do that. We don't really want to do this. We're not going to do that. And this was the permit here. So what we did is, she had already had a PE do this. So we simply put into the permit a requirement that PE inspect and certify that you did every single thing on it. Really reduced the staff requirement to go after those people. I kind of hate imposing this for a homeowner that has a very small thing. I don't think we're going to be doing this for bulkhead repairs. But for the kind of job this was, a really very complex job where we had to consider keeping a part of the bulkhead, removing a part of the bulkhead. What do we do with the tree that's there? This was not a simple problem. Okay, all right. Can everyone see these comments? The numbers are the different commenters, but I haven't put who they are. The first comment is looking for a better definition of the wetlands jurisdiction. I think that can be easily added. If anyone objects to any of this, let me know. A request to add a BIMS link certainly can be done. There's a comment that maintenance should not require a permit. And it may very well not require a permit. But that will be a judgment that is made when you go out and talk to them. I don't see a change to the language based on this. All right. There's a request to add the creeks to the map.
I think it's creek names or.
Yeah. Let's just, what I'm going to ask is for you to authorize me and Kim to figure out how to do these things. Does anyone think it's an absolute requirement to add the creeks to the map?
Application.
Yes.
Doug, what do you mean that it would be a complication to add those?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I get too busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be hard. They want us to add a staff email address. Is there an email address we could put in it?
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Okay, well, then we have to put it in the guidance.
Yeah.
Is that like a permanent non-individual staff member? Because
Yes, I set one up in the past few months just for this. Yes.
no reason.
I'll make sure you guys get it too. Sorry.
There's a request to make it clear that the contractor is subject to fines, just like the applicant. That's a very good thing. It's a comment that the flow sheet is in color, and when you copy it in black and white, you can't tell what it means.
Attaching and spot. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, or how many people are making copies of this in black and white anymore? I'm not sure that that's a.
Is it gonna be available online?
Yes.
So it is, so, okay, all right.
See. Include the site-specific BIMS guidance reference. We can certainly do that. That's the coastal. I think that's actually there already, isn't it? If it's not, we can add that into the references very easily. They're talking about the VIMS coastal survey says what each property is supposed to end up with. There's a comment to include the original living shoreline policy. We're superseding that,
Yes.
so I don't think we actually want to include it. There's some editing for clarity. I think I'd like to ask you to just leave that to us. They asked to review the additional permits required. We could simply just review additional permits required. They ask us to define a complete application.
Hard to do, depends on the project.
I agree. I don't want to define it because I want to leave it to the discretion of the staff.
And
I don't even know that VMRC defines what a complete says here. Application shall be considered incomplete until a statutory requirement is met, and those statutory requirements are found up in that reference 1302B. So until you have those things,
Definitions there.
yeah. So I mean, I can pull that out if you want.
I
Send it.
would like a consensus that we say no to this comment.
I can reference the exact line that you,
Okay.
that answers that.
But that's a good idea. Good idea. There's a question about, asking us how the Wetlands Board meets its no net loss commitment. That is something that we decide in every permit. I don't think it's appropriate for the guidance. It's an interesting comment, but I don't think it's germane to addressing that. There's another comment to explain each of the checklist items. But we were unable to get BMRC to explain each of the checklist items, so I don't think we ought to attempt to do it. Mark, do you think we can get BMRC to explain each and every checklist item?
That's a hard,
Yeah.
it's very subjective. I would stay away from that.
I think so too. So this last comment, this is an edit. So in the drafting of the original, and this is probably the most important one to discuss here. In the drafting of the applicant guide, we have the crossed out language that says the Fairfax County Wetlands Board may or may not take the secondary conditions into consideration. The commenter is asking us to revise that to state that the Wetlands Board will carefully review the information you provide and take it into account in making a permitting decision. So a little background on this, and then I'd like to hear discussion. There have been challenges to Wetlands Board's decisions brought before VMRC. And VMRC has made it clear that secondary conditions may be considered by the Wetlands Board, but we are not required to. And this language was placed in response to the statements at VMRC permit appeals hearings. If we go to the other language, I think it gives us a much more affirmative requirement to take those requirements into account, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But this is one I would like guidance from the board members on.
Be convinced that we'll carefully review the information you provide. What they provide, lots of information that's not germane. I'm not going to sit through 60 pages of something. And leave it up to the judgment of may or may not take these secondary considerations.
Any other comments?
I just think the public will find the may or may not take these. I think it's a little confusing for some. So I think that's probably for clarity.
Sure deserve.
It is. The
Right.
commenter's comment was it's offensive.
Oh.
Can't be taken into account.
I'm a little bit, no, I want to listen. What do people think about this?
Secondary considerations are just additional information.
No, they're not just, I mean, this is the economics, you know, how much it costs. You know, are there
Yes.
trees to be destroyed? No, it's the real, it's all the stuff we really have to make a judgment about. It's not trivial.
Maybe consider.
I think the language as proposed gives us an affirmative requirement to take into account anything they provide. I think that's too much. But is the language as previously written, is it too acerbic?
It can be interpreted that way, yeah.
I got no issues with it.
So I would like permission from the board to soften this, but not overcommit you. Are you comfortable with me and Kim doing this? Sure. Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the Wetlands Board authorize the existing committee of me and Kim to take into account all the comments that are received by September 13th, revise and publish the applicant guide and the supplemental information form.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. What's our next?
Board manual, I was just gonna give a quick update that Dean and I are gonna, well, he's waiting on me, so I'm gonna share, I'm gonna get back to him with the information he asked. So we should have that updated and yeah. The next item was mine. Good to move forward with some JPA updates. Okay, so. Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm not sharing. Weird, it's sharing here, but it's not sharing. It's not our virtual. Sorry, everyone. 1 minute. 1 minute. Yes. Okay, so let me navigate real quick so I can actually see what I'm looking. These are a cluster of the permits that are kind of ongoing. Like I said, routing through. So they've had a JPA submitted. The yellow ones, I have worked over the past 6 months since we last met. Essentially, this is an update since we last met, which was, I think, March 30th. So the orange, yellow one JPAs that have been submitted have been deemed no permit necessary. Some of these are just peers that have had applications in which there was no proposed work or disturbance in the wetlands jurisdiction. So but I'd mentioned that. So I put little check boxes over those. I've got a few older ones that I'm trying to work with the applicants still to kind of get them up to speed and coordinate a JPA update. The application on Gunston Road here is one where we've had a JPA submission with a geotech study. It involves a pretty significant grading project on a property and some pretty serious stabilization, in which I've been coordinating with LDS on, because they're the ones that review site plans with significant grading and geotech studies. I have verbally encouraged the applicant to consider adjusting their JPA to not disturb the wetlands jurisdiction because they have such a long, expansive property. They have quite a bit of space that I've asked them to, if you can, the wetlands jurisdiction as a point of potential solution for them. I am waiting to hear more from them on that. Recently, Mark Eversole and I met and discussed an application at 6045 River Drive. It's all the way down here, where the applicant is proposing to replace a bulkhead with new pilings. And they anticipate it to be located 24 inches or less channelward side or channelward of the existing bulkhead. Mark Eversole back me up here, but I think the Corps of Engineers is taking a really strong look at this. It's a pretty significant bulkhead. It's, I don't know, Mark, would you say 10 feet tall maybe? And it's got a pretty significant cliff. I did send initial feedback to the contractor agent, and Mark Eversole looked at the letter before I sent it, and it included a whole list of other things that they needed to include. But I think Mark and I are also kind of waiting to see what the Corps of Engineers says about it, because they're concerned about it being constructed, a new bulkhead being constructed on the channelward side and not in the exact current place, because there is some SAD, that subaqueous vegetation out there.
That's a big cliff.
Yes, there's
They're trying to keep the cliff from taking the property up above. Is that what they're doing?
they have an existing bulkhead. It's pretty significant, but it is showing signs of wear and age. So
Well, they also have a big long dock coming out. A different property.
they don't have a dock, no.
No dock, okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we have a site visit for this property again, potentially. But there was a lot for the applicant to include in their next submission. This was not a PE sealed document. However, I would foresee that this one may fall within that category. It's in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
No, this is a bulkhead replacement. Probably 80% of it is channelward of mean low water, so it would be a VMRC permit. But some of the return walls and the corners have intertidal impacts, and so the wetland board would have to rule on that before VMRC would do our permitting. And Katie's right that Corps and NOAA are both concerned about the submerged aquatic vegetation out in where the new bulkhead would be.
Is it constructible, landward of the existing bulkhead to stay away from the permitting issue, or does that not resolve it?
I think that's part of what Katie asked for, as to whether there would be dead men or tiebacks, how far back they could go. Because there's a second bulkhead landward of the first bulkhead. It's kind of a stair-stepped property.
Be converted to a sill?
Excuse me?
Could it be converted to a sill, function like a sill?
It could. We'd have to look at the fetch. It's a pretty good fetch. It's out on the river, the Potomac, I think.
Yes.
Has Vim's looked at it?
Not yet.
I can keep you all updated on this one, especially since it's a bulkhead.
Yeah, it's a bulkhead now, but keep in mind, as we review these things, the assumption is it has to be a living shoreline, unless they can show it's not. And like the Green Drive property, we essentially converted half of their bulkhead to a sill, which allowed a living shoreline landward of the sill. And especially if there's an existing bulkhead that's failing. If that, like on Green Drive, could be converted to a sill. It does sound like the kind of project that maybe a review by VIMS would be most helpful.
We might be heading in that direction. I think in some ways, like we said it, I want to see what the Corps said, because if they're gonna squash this idea of it being channel word, then
Goes away.
then the whole thing has to be reassessed, and that's when bring you guys in and bring VIMS along for the ride.
Yeah, but to restate part of our purpose here, if this is a project where we could encourage a living shoreline, you know, that's part of our role now is to try to get more living shorelines.
Right.
And that cliff is high. By the way, is this wetlands or is it beach? Some of that area is beach.
We'd have to bring Emily in for that, but I think I would probably consider the impacts to be tidal wetlands on this property. There could be a beach next door to it. There's a unstabilized shoreline that you might consider a beach, but I think this property is probably a tidal wetland. But again, we'd get VIMS to look at that.
We haven't addressed the beach in a while, but the new VMRC guidelines for wetlands, they apply to the beaches as well, don't they, Mark?
That's correct.
Some people are shocked to find out we have beach in Fairfax County. I'm sorry, please.
So that's pretty much the update I have, unless there are questions. I mean, we could have a few come up that are going to be ready. There's just been a lot of other permits that have required a lot of effort recently. So moving on. Why does make it not? Oh, there we go. Let's see here. Oh, that didn't show. Sorry, this doesn't show up that great on screen here in the room. But Clyde, I think the next couple things that I wanted to maybe talk about at another meeting here is that, are you planning to have a full adoption of the revised policy documents, or are we just
What
going
would
to
the board
handle
like?
that?
Would you like us to bring it back to you, or can we move to approve it tonight with revisions as you provide as we discussed them? And we need a motion for someone, which either Kim or I should make, that we be empowered to finish off and publish these after the completion of public comments. Or something to that effect, unless you would prefer to have another shot at it.
We discussed there's only the one as the last comment that would be left to your better judgment, right? Is that accurate?
Yes. And I really don't anticipate we're going to get any more comments.
I move to defer to the expertise of the.
Need to be a little more explicit. How about you move to authorize the subcommittee to blah, 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 blah.
Move to authorize the subcommittee to complete the document as discussed this evening.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? I can't see the people
I
who are
know, I'm sorry.
participating remotely.
Something is
Can we have a
happening.
verbal reaction for the remote people, please?
Doug raised his hand, Orly raised her hand.
Right.
And who are we missing?
John.
John?
Oh, I can't see John. Why can't I see John? Oh, John raised his hand. He just wasn't visible on my
We
screen.
can record that it is a unanimous yes. everyone's,
Right, I
the
don't-
reason I did that is I think we do have to record. Made the motion, who seconded, and what was the vote? Meeting law. So do we need, you want to schedule this temporarily? Because the next thing is this hearing, right?
Right. The only other thing I will say is that I definitely need to have time with you all at some board meeting, probably by the end of this calendar year, about these changes to our bylaws that the General Assembly is requiring to be made. And I can fully explain that at another time. It just further specifies remote participation and what it means to have an in-person meeting, how often you can have virtual meetings. We can still have virtual meetings, but I think it's only up to 25% of your meeting.
25% or 2, whichever is
Right.
greater. So
Is this something that somebody's got to write up a document, right? Could you simply distribute the document and then poll people to see if they want a meeting on it?
I think you guys have to vote and adopt your bylaws.
That's right, we did this already, did it. EQAC already did it.
AFDAC is going to be coming up soon, so.
But I do think if I'm doing my job and distributing the information ahead of time, that even if we have a public hearing for a JPA in the near future, that we could take care of this administrative item within a matter of a few minutes, if that would work with you.
That's fine.
I'll distribute that stuff.
So do we want to schedule something like in November? The third week or so of November, not around Thanksgiving, but that's 90 days. I'm just trying to think about our 90-day.
No, that would be. The end of November.
17th on the end.
But just get something on the schedule. Is that what
Right,
you're
that's what I'm
saying, Kim?
thinking. Yeah, like maybe first week in December. Just to put something on the schedule so we all have, and it would be, here's what we do the other, and
If you
Yeah,
stick with
calendar.
Wednesday, you could do December 1st.
Number one, yeah.
December 1 is a Wednesday.
I got a Thursday.
It is.
I'd like to avoid Wednesday and Thursday if we could.
State you think.
How's Tuesday, November 29th?
No,
Oh, wild.
Everyone on the call, is everyone okay with the tentative meeting scheduled for November 29th?
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, Thanksgiving is the 24th. So this is the week after Thanksgiving.
okay, perfect.
guess it seems like everybody gave a verbal or physical head nod or,
All right, so just,
okay.
yeah, just tentatively, we'll send that out and
Okay. And then I think we have to skip this item because I totally forgot to send you guys the meeting minutes from the March meeting. No, I sent them. I forgot to. Make sure I sent them
don't.
like months ago. We're gonna have to deal with this at the next meeting. I apologize.
Into the agenda.
And it's just, if we have anyone for public comment, I don't
I think we have any public line.
know. We have no one in person and no one on the line from the public.
Any of the board members have anything else they would like to discuss? We could all welcome our new member.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, typically we open the meeting all about you. I'll tell you, this is the first time I've ever had a closed session with Wetlands Board. So it is kind of new to us, and I'm sorry that this was your first meeting. But welcome, and we greatly look forward to your participation and soon we'll give you a job.
Okay, yeah, next time I'll definitely be more prepared. I just got the information over the last few business days, so I wasn't able to review it all before this meeting.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My job is at George Mason University in Fairfax. I'm an administrative faculty member, and I have an appointment in the environmental science and policy department. Right now, I'm doing a rotation at the National Science Foundation. So I'm still a George Mason faculty member, but I'm spending basically all my time at NSF. And of course, I live in Fairfax County, and I'm on this board in my role as a citizen of the county.
Thank you for volunteering. I really appreciate it. I tried to read about what you do at NSF. I confess I did not understand it. But maybe sometime in the future we can explain it to all of us.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thank you very much for volunteering. Anyone else? I have a motion to adjourn. No one wants to leave? I need a motion to adjourn for somebody. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good night. Kim, you gave us a scare.